Hi, everybody. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. Hi. So it is such an honor to be here with you. I wish I was there in person, I really do, but it just wasn't possible. So I'm excited about showing you a little bit of our work and talking about data in the public space and generative environments. As you know, my name is Susan Narduli, and I'm the principal of a multidisciplinary studio here in Los Angeles. We're a team of architects and artists and planners, programmers, media designers. Our studio is about 20 years old. And we've moved from creating buildings and parks into a real focus on public space, and especially technology in public space, how technology can bring public spaces alive. This is a little collage of our work and done over the past 10 or 12 years. A lot of the projects are created with the idea of engaging the public so that when people come into the space, they can interact with it through many different means. All of our work is site-specific. We use many different types of media when we first approach a project. And as I said, I mean, the focus has really been on public space. And with that comes an understanding of how our public spaces have changed. And they've really changed dramatically since we've been doing this. So I'm going to be talking about what might be considered a new typology of public space. I have an undergraduate degree in visual arts, sculpture mostly. And at the end of my studies, I started to get very interested in large-scale architectural installation work. And I decided to go to architecture school and study architecture. And I did wind up getting a master's degree in architecture and am a licensed architect as well. So coming from my background in visual arts and my experience in doing these ephemeral constructions, it always seemed like hubris to me, I think, that in architecture school, there was this expectation that we were creating things that lasted. Maybe not for eternity, but certainly the idea that was put forth that the physical environment was fixed. But that didn't seem right to me. And my first project in architecture school was creating a building where everything was fluid, everything was movable. All of the walls could move, they were on tracks, they were translucent, there was ambiguity. I finished my architectural career with a thesis project on ambiguity and impermanence in architecture. So I brought that experience into my architectural practice and into the work that we're doing now in public spaces. So I mentioned I live in Los Angeles, right? And Los Angeles is, Los Angeles has been known as Cardboard City. And it was known as Cardboard City for decades because of the film industry mostly. Things can come down and then be built in a matter of days. There's this idea of reinvention all the time. And you can walk down a street that you've lived on for 10 years and there'll be a film crew there and the whole thing will have been totally transformed. So it conjures up a lot of visions when you think about Los Angeles, but not permanence. It's the land of reinvention. Anything can happen here. Generative design is something that I've most recently actually really been able to explore in a meaningful way. It's been on my mind. And this idea that we can create environments that are responsive is something that I have been intrigued with, but with new technologies, we're finally getting to the point where we can actually do this. And in fact, this little video here on the screen, we're actually creating a piece like this. This was a little study that we've done to show a concept where you can actually, through your movement in a space, you can change a physical, the physical parameters of a space. So, so as we kind of move through this idea of what can public spaces be, I think one of the important things is to understand community. Because as I said when I first started out, that even in the last 10 years, we have changed so much. Well, we've changed even in how we identify ourselves. I grew up in a really small town, and it looked a little bit like this image on the left. Everybody knew each other. There was this kind of these shared symbols, and we all identified with it because we didn't know anything else. And now we're kind of moving into this space on the right. This is my new community. And I think probably for many of you, it's the same in that things have opened up, things are diverse. We're global now. What does that mean in terms of our public spaces? How does that inform how we identify with each other? What are those shared values? What is the experience of a public space? Here is a little slide that kind of shows, like, coming from this idea of a notion of a community that is represented in our public spaces. Vito Okanchi did this amazing article years ago on the importance of the clock in a town square, because everybody would walk by it and we were all kind of on the same time. And he was saying how he longs for that. Well, that I think there is a need in all of us to have some degree of constancy and something that we can all identify with. And yet we have the opportunities through technology to create public spaces that can truly express a new idea of who we are, what we're doing, what is public life, where's the meaning, and how we engage with that. It's important. I firmly believe it's very important that our public spaces thrive, because through our public spaces we can come together and we can share things. We invest in what might be important in this country. We've come through and are still, I suppose, in a very divisive time. I think our public spaces have the opportunity to break through that. We see each other face to face. We get out of our houses. We come into something physical, and through our public spaces, we can engage and live together in a different way than we do online or through Twitter. But to get there, I think we need new tools for placemaking, new tools for expression. And I believe technology brings that opportunity to reimagine that public space. And data, a lot of our work does bring data into a public space. And I think that data becomes a language of public space, of who we are. This is a project that we did in downtown Los Angeles a couple of years ago. It's a collaboration between my studio and Rafiq Anadol's studio. And we started working on it with the intention to create something that hadn't really been done before, to take many, many layers of a city and create a cinematic kind of portrayal of its life and its breath, how it lives, how it changes on a daily basis. It was sited on a new building in downtown Los Angeles, Metropolis Towers. The piece itself is 100 feet long. The scale in an image is quite deceptive. This thing is quite long. So 100 feet long and about 18 feet tall. And it's one of the things that you're seeing in this image on the left is actually the reflection of it. It's reflected on two sides by the glass of the towers. The piece brings together the visible and the invisible forces that shape Los Angeles. And we really felt that when you do a data piece and you're doing data visualizations, there's always that balance between how people are understanding it. Do they really understand these abstract visualizations in a meaningful way? I believe we do, because there are different ways of knowing, and there's certainly a very clear narrative and an intellect that where we can understand things, and yet there's other ways of knowing too, things that we feel. We can pick up things by rhythm and color and even abstraction, form, in a way that might not be quite so obvious initially. So we thought that if we could bring together the hidden layers, the data, the environmental forces and the cultural forces in an abstract way, but also layer it with some of the physical threads of the city, and not as a juxtaposition, but really more as a confluence of different ways of experience, that we would have a shot at really doing this very comprehensive portrayal of the city as it was changing. So Convergence, it receives 8 individual APIs that I'll go into in a second. There's also the thread of the imagery, which I'll also talk about. It was a 3-year effort and about 30 people it took to create the piece throughout that 3-year time. This is an aerial image of the piece at night with a seismic visualization on it. So the piece exists really in 2 environments, physically on the site. There's also a virtual environment that I will show you. And this is the project pipeline. As I said, it took about 3 years to create the piece. We spent the first 2 years documenting the city and researching the city. And then the last year was the production and the installation of the piece. I'm going to take you through a series of slides that show you some of the documentation of the project. These were time-lapse videos that we did of the city of Los Angeles. We did a lot of drone footage. We also started to create a 3D model of the city because we wanted to be able to show different scenes of the city in a broader context, both in the online environment and also on the screen on the site. And this is another image of the model as we started to introduce the structures, the buildings. And this was part of in a way, it was quite moving to actually get out into the city and to start to record the everyday life. So to capture the infrastructure, that bridge at the top has been demolished since we did this piece. The infrastructure, the cultural life of the city. This is the Chinese New Year, and the people. There was a lot of documentation that we did of people on the street. So the data. That was something that was particularly interesting to me and to Rafik, to both of our studios. We had both done a lot of work with data before. But the idea that we could now, with new technologies, capture data in a way that we had never done was really exciting. And to create visualizations that people could understand, and to bring that real-time, moment-to-moment experience of the city of Los Angeles to life. These are the data sets that we decided to do. We focused on two different broad categories, nature and culture. And what you see on the left side of the screen are the data sets having to do with nature. So the first one, Seismic, which we couldn't call Seismic because in LA, it's a little scary, the word seismic. So we had to change it to tectonic because that seemed less scary to the client. But we use seismic activity in the city. It's not astrological. There's a little typo on that slide. It's astronomy. It's astronomy. So we use astronomy, which even though we only think about that in the evening, it's there all the time. So these screens show day and night, wind, temperature, and weather. And on the right side was culture. So we had RSS feeds coming live, news feeds that came in. We had an aggregator. We had a profanity filter so that we could, take out some things that worked for the news feeds coming in and also for social media. There was the metro line and traffic. The second one down on the right, demographics. Demographics, because it's the data coming in is so slow. On this particular data set, it was a combination of archival data and real-time data. And then the one on the right on the bottom is social media. We focused on Twitter. And so what you'll be seeing are actually tweets as they're being located in the city. And then there was also this running text on the side when the social media comes up, and you can actually see some of the tweets coming in. As I said, somewhat filtered, but they still got us in trouble. Because this is considered a public art piece, there was an issue, I think, with advertising. There's a lot of fees that come in that would be conceived as advertising, especially for Disneyland. That was the first hurdle we had. So we had to go back in and try to also screen out anything that would be considered advertising. So I'm going to show you a little bit of the final content, and in the same way, kind of positioned, because it's a 100-foot long piece, everything is formatted in these really super wide bands. And then at the end, after we get through that, I just have a really short little video that I'd like to show you as well. As I said, we kind of dug in a little bit into some of the historical archive of the city, and we had images that we brought together. One of the challenges of the piece initially was, how do you take all this very divergent imagery and somehow create a cohesive piece out of it? And we struggled with a lot. We had already, we had worked on the transitions, because each of the pieces, let's say, are, you know, maybe they run from 2 minutes to 4 minutes in length. So we were able to play with transparency and layering, and the transitions were starting to look really good, but we're dealing with abstract visualizations and 3D models and drone footage and historical imagery, and everything has its own character. So how do we bring this all together so it doesn't look choppy? We came up with this idea of using particles, and that, so the imagery would be somewhat dissipated. It would come in and then it would move out again. And I think because of the way I'm presenting, I can't really see the videos, but you know, hopefully you're able to see this with these historical images that they begin as these kind of particle fields, and then the legibility starts to begin, and they emerge. And the same thing happens with the documentation of people, where sometimes the screen will come in as a particle field, and the people will slowly emerge and then pull back out again. And sometimes you'll see actually a span of a scene that we've captured, and then it will slowly start to dissipate, and then might move into an abstraction of the city or data overlay. And we found that it took quite a while to work it all out, but it does feel quite cohesive when you're on the site. And it was something that also, it brought the piece and some of the layers into a world, to me, where they became married by energy. And so this idea of these particles and things dissipating and becoming concrete and then becoming ephemeral, to me, brought the piece to life. It brought new meaning to the piece in a way that I found to be very much in keeping with our intention. This is the 3D model we created of the city, and we were able to kind of bring that together, many models of that people had done online, and we went to SciArc, one of our architectural schools here, and we were able to bring together a 3D model of a very large city in a relatively short period of time. We didn't have to construct everything, and it was great. This is the Metro data set. And I mean, the idea that, you know, traffic is a real big deal here in the city. If you've ever been here, you know what it's like to be on that 405. And it was really fun to not just be able to portray it, but even as during the research phase, to actually see ourselves, this is what we're living in. It was really quite informative. And you know, data does that. It makes you understand who you are in a broader context. Get outside of your own skin in that way. This was one of my favorite visualizations. It was kind of unanticipated, but it was funny, kind of, it's a bit humorous. And this is the wind data set. We don't get a ton of wind here, but when the Santa Anas blow in the fall, this thing it's nuts. I mean, there's a lot of wind. So, it looks it's beautiful on the screen. This is the weather data set. It's the temperature, but also the humidity, precipitation. So all of these things start to inform the piece, not just the movement of the piece, but the colors and the speed of the visualization are informed by the ongoing weather. Seismic, even though you don't hear about it, we have earthquakes every day. We have many earthquakes every day here in Los Angeles. We had one yesterday, which I think was a 3.5, but the smaller ones, you don't even know they're happening. So this is also a pretty active data set. It's Los Angeles and it spreads out to the broader region. And it shows you not only visually what is happening with the land in an exaggerated form, but it gives you that information of exactly what the scale of the earthquake is and the GPS coordinates of it. And this is the astronomy data set. It's interesting because even when I left here, you know, it's very early here in Los Angeles, and I left my house to come to my studio at 4 in the morning. So I looked up and you would think you'd be able to see the stars, but you really can't in a city. It's never really dark, even at 4 in the morning or 3 in the morning. So I'm sorry? Hello? Yeah, so this is something that was really quite lovely to see, to really see the stars that are above our head. The RSS feeds, this is the news coming in. Again, it was filtered, always changing. It would just pick the kind of the different words from the news of the day and bring it all to this kind of undulating form in the on the screen. The demographics of an abstraction of archival and the real-time demographics, but again, changing very slowly. So most of the data is archival. And social media, again, another one of my favorites. You can see the tweets in the middle image on the left. These are the tweets that you can actually see on the screen. And then the rising of the tweets that are coming out of the city. And just a little bit about the virtual environment. In the last video, I can show you just a bit of a clip. So just like the screen on the towers, there are the data streams that are coming in. We're using the same data streams and you can actually see it. You can get a kind of a behind the scene look at the data. There's also an audio track. And the audio track, we originally were going to capture the sounds of Los Angeles, but it became a little challenging to do that and to make that work. So the audio track is inspired by the city. But if you go to ConvergenceLA.com, you can you can visit the online scene. This is just a little snapshot of what it looks like. It has the zoom in capability, so you get the broader context even with the ocean, and then you can zoom into the cities, and you've got the all the data feeds that are coming in on the right. So here's just a 2-minute video of the piece, and because I can't see it, you'll have to tell me when it's over.
over.
Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
I agree.